All right, let's begin. So firstly, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you. It's a great turnout today on a very important topic in research. Delighted to have Professor Devasmita Chakraverty, who's an assistant professor here at the Ravi Mathai Center for Educational Innovation. She has a very interesting educational trajectory herself, starting with zoology, environmental sciences, and then landing up in educational sector. And her research focuses on higher education in particular, looking at people in the STEM fields and medicine in particular. She's been, on a particular aspect of this is something called as the imposter syndrome, on which she's been spending a lot of time doing research over the last few years, which is, I think, a very fascinating avenue of research. And she also teaches courses in mixed methods and survey development, a doctoral level course at IIMA, using aspects of mixed methods designed to conduct her research. So she's very much invested in this as a method. She uses it, and that's what she's going to talk about today. I'll just end by saying that she's also an avid photographer, and so she clicks photographs really well. So and she is on social media, so you should definitely check her photographs out there. All right, with that, I'm going to let you begin, and looking forward to learn new aspects of mixed methods.
Thank you, Professor Tumbe. It's lovely to be here. It's an honor to talk about things you yourself do in your daily life and you're excited about. Welcome everyone. Very happy to have you all here. I'm beyond happily surprised that so many of you have decided to spend a significant portion of your Friday evening learning about mixed methods research. So thank you for that. You're welcome to keep your camera on or off. It's completely up to you. It is a workshop at the end of the day. So we will be doing a lot of interactive exercises, breakout rooms and things like that. So please make sure you have a pen and paper if you're old school like me, or you can have your laptop in front of you, because we will be doing some writing as well. I'll go ahead and I'll start sharing my screen and then we'll get started. Yep. And you all can see the screen, right? You don't have to say a yes, but just maybe a thumbs up or something. That would be good. Okay. Awesome. So getting started with mixed methods. This is a screenshot of my website, my IIMA website. If you want to read more about the kind of work I do that Chinmay talked about, the kind of courses I teach, then this would be a good place to go. You can also connect with me on Twitter. I post things about mostly the imposter syndrome and other things I do from there. So having said that, today this is what I thought we'll do for the workshop itself. It's a long 3-hour session. So for the first 50 minutes, we'll try to get a basic understanding of mixed methods research. There's a survey, as you're listening to me in the first few minutes, if you could just go ahead and fill out the information. And I hope everyone can see the survey on the chat screen. I don't know at what level do you have an idea of mixed method? Have you just heard about the name, or have you done some work on mixed method but want to better your skills? So what we'll do is we'll assume that you've just heard of the term, but you haven't done any work on mixed methods itself. So we'll start from there. And I teach a course, a full term course on mixed methods research, a 25-hour course. So what we'll do today is kind of a longish trailer. We'll talk about some of the very basic, fundamental, more like a mixed method, 101 kind of a thing. And we'll take it from there. So that is what we'll do for the first 50 minutes. We'll get a basic understanding of what is mixed method. Is everything that we see that calls itself mixed method or not? Then we'll take a 10-minute break. Then for the next 50 minutes in our session 2, we'll look at some of the core mixed methods designs. What kind of designs? We'll look at some examples. Then we'll take a 10-minute break again. And for the last hour, from 7 to 8, we'll take a look at one of the cases of a mixed methods study that I conducted. We'll take a deeper look at it, and we'll see what kind of a mixed method was it, what kind of things happened in that. So are we all good to go? Again, another thumb would be good. A thumbs up would be good. Okay, awesome. Now, this is the survey I was talking about. Yeah. I'll be showing you lots of papers that are MMR and papers that are not MMR, so that you know the difference. Yeah, also keep checking your chat, because I'm sure a lot of interesting things would come up there. So please take a few minutes before I tell you anything about what I know about mixed methods. I first took this course when I was a PhD student. I got my PhD in science education at the University of Virginia. And that is when I first took a course, and it was fascinating. So just tell me a little bit, very briefly, about, in the survey, if you don't have the link, just maybe we can share it again. What is your prior exposure to mixed methods research? Maybe you've just heard of the term, or maybe you've just read a paper, or maybe none of those. Number two, why are you interested in this particular workshop? What got you interested? That will also help me to kind of design similar workshops in the future. And the third thing is, probably you can think about, what do you hope to gain out of this workshop? And think a little objectively. One thing I can assure you, we are not going to become experts in MMR overnight. I'm still learning. Even after all these years, I'm still learning. But the last question is more for you, to be able to imagine, what exactly do you need to know about MMR? Whether you need to teach it in the future, or whether you'll be doing research in the future, you'll be giving a talk like this in the future. What do you hope to gain out of this particular workshop? That would be interesting. So I'll stop talking. I'll wait till 5:10 or 5:11. I'll let you write that. But please make sure that you fill out this survey. We'll go ahead. Now, to get the most out of this workshop, what we'll do is we'll look at papers, but not from a content perspective. We are typically trained to look at papers from a content perspective, which is also why we either end up reading papers that are in our field, or papers that are very interesting to us, right? It's a little bit of a shift in the lens we use to read a paper, and we'll go through it together. We will be looking at papers more from a methodological perspective. Okay, not only that, we'll go a step further, and we'll also look at some of the design flaws or methodological limitations. No paper is perfect. There are always limitations in every study. So we'll also train, in whatever amount of time we have, to take a look at some of the flaws. Now, we'll be doing a lot of activities. This is a workshop after all. So for the next 3 minutes, 1 minute to think and 2 minutes to type on the chat, as well as write it on paper, I want you to think of, first listen to me. I want you to think about 2 examples in your everyday life where you collect data from more than one source to make a decision. Please write about it in the chat window. Be as detailed as you can, so that someone can read it and know exactly what you're talking about. When I give this activity, by default, a lot of people say, when we buy a product, we read the reviews, we see the rating. Since so many people talk about it, let's make it a little more interesting. So don't start typing now. What I want you to do is to think for a minute, and then to give me 2 examples of how you make decisions using data from more than one source, and what are those sources of data. Since I won't be able to chat individually with all of you, what you post here in itself should be self-explanatory. What kind of data do you use to make those decisions? Think about it. It's 5:13. At 5:16, we'll stop this activity. Okay, maybe you all can be a little more detailed about it. Instead of saying what are the sources, tell me about what is that event when you need to decide and what are the sources you use. So here is something that is not about buying a product. Here is hiring domestic help. Interesting. And the chats are going really fast, so I'll try to read whatever comes first. You all are talking about buying. Is there anything you do other than buying? Just curious. So maybe you can also think about that. Looking at research papers. RNP office, we can save the chat, right? Because I'm sure some very interesting things will come up that we could read later on.
Yes, we can see the chat.
Okay. So when looking at research papers, that's interesting. Okay, I saw a decision to marry someone and then it went up, but that's interesting. Maybe take a minute more to write about it. To learn a new methodology, I read about it and also watch a video or two to gain a deep understanding. What about making a decision? Admission in a college, ask friends, others who might be, but that's still asking, right? That's still the same kind of data, which is asking people. You're just asking different people. So to know about a person, I search on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Google, but you're still searching on social media. You're searching on websites, but is there any other method? I'm not talking of different things of the same method. So decision regarding which doctor to approach for a health issue, what do you do? How do you decide? What are the different sources of data you collect? Awesome. Awesome. And you can spend a few more seconds writing your points. Now, what's the point of this activity? Personally, what I thought right now of examples of how in the rainy season, the decision to take an umbrella with me or not when I go out. I look at the weather app on my phone, but I also go out and look at the sky. And if the sky looks clear enough for the amount of time it takes me to reach my office, then probably I don't take my umbrella. Or whether I should take a particular course or not. How do I decide that? I look at the course outline, the syllabus itself. But I would also go and ask someone who has taken the course, right? Which means I'm not utilizing the same source of data, which is if it's online, then I'm only finding online information. No, I look at the syllabus myself. If I have questions, then I'll email the professor asking to answer those questions. And also I'll go and talk to someone who's actually had that experience of taking the course. What would I ask them? How difficult was the course? What was the demand for time? Was it a good professor or was the professor not so good? Which means I'm kind of looking in different directions and different sources of data to come up to a decision. What is the point of this? The point is for me to, according to the social exchange theory, to maximize my benefit that I get out of it, to to minimize my cost, there's still some cost of maybe money or time or energy, and also to improve my trust. That's what the social exchange theory says, very briefly, that you make a decision based on what's the best case situation, that increase benefit, decrease cost, and improve trust. And consciously or subconsciously, we all at some level kind of make these decisions. Now you're looking at multiple methods. Would you call this mixed methods research? And why or why not? Maybe you can write a line here on chat. Is this mixed methods research? Okay, someone says yes. So someone who says, yes, it is mixed methods research. Now again, it's an okay place to have an opinion. Yes, no, maybe, I don't know. Any answer is fine. The idea is for us to get a better understanding. So for someone who says yes, could you just unmute yourself and tell me, why do you think this is mixed methods?
Hello, I was just thinking about this because there's two methods of data. Like if at all I'm asking somebody, there's a deeper reflection and deeper thought process. But if I'm reading, it's very superficial. So there are two types of data here. I'm trying to look at depth and also at breadth. So
Okay.
so this is a little different. So I'm calling it two methods.
You know, you're calling it two methods, but are you calling it mixed methods? That's the question.
Yeah. If there are two, it can be like one can be quanti in approach and the other can be quali in approach.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
Thank you, Vivek. For someone who thinks it's a no, what would be your rationale?
I don't think it is a mixed methods research, because we are using only different ways to collect the data just to get information. So I don't think it is a mixed methods research.
So you say that we are only using different kinds of data, but it is not mixed methods. Fair enough.
Yes.
Now I didn't ask whether it's mixed methods research. I just said if it is mixed methods.
Excuse me, ma'am.
You have a, yeah?
I would say it is a mixed method because you're collecting the information from two different sources, be it primary or secondary. It can be two primary or two secondary. So I think it is a mixed method collection.
Okay. So primary or secondary, I also heard qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah, it can be two primary or two secondary, maybe a survey or whatever it is.
Okay. Now, I won't tell you what is the answer. There's no one clear answer. But as we go along in the first session, maybe at the end of the session, we'll revisit this question and maybe we'll have a better understanding of whether this is mixed methods or not. Okay. And thank you for those who shared your perspective. Sorry, my cursor is a little stuck, so I'm trying to get it back. All right. Now, let's park that thought for now. And let's look at something different. What is mixed methods research? How do we define it? Some people call it the third paradigm. The first paradigm being, well, the first and second paradigm being quantitative research and qualitative research. So mixed methods is a relatively new-ish field in that way, although the methods have been used for a long time, but the name itself is fairly new, 1970s, 80s, I would say. Green 2007 calls it multiple ways of seeing and hearing, like we did in the exercise where we are using multiple ways to hear about some kind of feedback and also read about it or see about it. Okay. Usually it's a combination of qualitative and quantitative methods to look at a research question. Usually there can be some exceptions, but for the purpose of this workshop, to keep it very simplistic, we'll call it qualitative plus quantitative research. Okay. Now, as we get a little more familiar with what's mixed methods research, we'll look at some of the study titles. These are real papers that I have picked from Google Scholar. And how do you know when you pick up a paper? The first thing you read is the title of the paper. Now, how do you know that you're going to read a mixed method study? One big way of knowing is if the term itself is there. If the study says, if the title says that this is mixed method, then it's most probably mixed methods, right? So if you look at some of these examples, understanding platform business models, a mixed method study of marketplaces, or understanding transition in care from hospital to homeless shelter, a mixed methods, community-based participatory approach. The titles keep getting longer and more complicated, but one thing that remains constant is the term mixed methods has been used. Okay, a mixed methods RCT, randomized controlled trial, or students' persistence in a distributed doctoral program in educational leadership in higher education, a mixed method study, and so on and so forth. Now, there are other ways of writing a mixed methods title. What are those? The development of client violence questionnaire. I don't know what happened in this study here, but just by looking at the title itself, I can guess that in order to build a questionnaire, a survey, they did some interviews. They did some interviews to come up with a few questions that was further floated in a survey. So in a way, they mixed quantitative data, qualitative data, and that is how they developed the questionnaire. The second one is unwritten rules of talking to doctors about depression, integrating qualitative and quantitative methods. Now this gets interesting. This actually says that qualitative and quantitative methods were integrated to do this study. So it is a mixed method study. The third one is also interesting. Closed and open-ended question. Tools in a telephone survey about the good teacher, an example of mixed method study. So again, this is a mixed method study, but they also give us another cue saying this is a closed and open-ended question. Okay. Now look at the fourth one. In their own words and by the numbers. Words, numbers. A mixed method study of Latina Community College presidents. Multi-method measurement of high-risk drinking location. So multi-method is a clue, and the other clue is extending the portal survey method with follow-up telephone interviews. Again, extending some kind of a survey with a follow-up interview. So you see how even without using the term mixed method, you can write a title for a mixed method study. You can get creative. You can use the word multi-method because mixed method, after all, is multi-method. You can talk of the method itself, the way you collected data, which is survey and interview. You can talk about closed-ended questions, open-ended question. You can talk about words. You can talk about numbers. Any questions? Maybe a quick question if you have.
How is the first one, the development of client violence questionnaire indicating about mixed methods?
Not in the title maybe, but I've read the paper. The paper is about a mixed method study. The assumption being that to develop the questionnaire, they did interviews, and that is what they explain in the paper. Now, I'm not saying every development of some questionnaire is a mixed method study, but this one is. What is the point of this? When you think of writing a paper, a mixed methods paper, when I look at particular papers I want to read on mixed methods, I go to Google Scholar and I type the word. So the question here is it necessary to write mixed method in the title? No, you don't need to write mixed method in the title. However, your paper will be easy to find on Google Scholar if you have used the term, just because it matches the keywords that you're using for. Now, you can also be using the term in the body of the paper. But the title matching is a much better way of your paper being found. Having said that, not everyone does it, like you can see. Okay. All right. Now, we'll do one more activity, which is, see, all the learning that we are having today doesn't make any sense if you can't apply it somewhere. And maybe you don't plan to do a mixed method study. It's completely fine. But for the purpose of the next 2.5 hours, I want you to imagine a study in your head. If you had to do a study, please start thinking more broadly about a study that you would like to conduct. You don't have to write about it in the chat, but write about it and keep it with you. Don't think of the methodology right now. So you don't have to make it a mixed method study. It can be anything you want to study, as broad as you can. The effect of online classes on students' learning. I'm just giving you an example. Okay. Write down the research problem and not the research question. I hope you know the difference between a research problem and a research question. A research question is much more specific. A research problem is more broad. I just want you to think more broadly that you would like to address. We will then think of your study from a methodological perspective. So maybe till 5:34, you can spend some time thinking about a broad study. And we'll take up this activity at the end. All right, shall we move on? Maybe a thumbs up on your window. Are we good? Okay. Now I'm making you do a bunch of things, but I'm not giving you answers. But don't stress out about it, because we'll come back and we'll revisit all those things that I've made you do. Now, what we'll do is we'll look at a real paper, our first paper, and I'll go ahead and I'll share the paper with you. Tell me if you can see the paper now and not the slides. What do you see on the screen?
It's a PDF.
Okay, you see the PDF. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. So, what's the title? Campaigning in the Fourth Age of Political Communication, a multi-method study on the use of Facebook by German and Austrian parties in the 2013 national election campaigns. Now, remember what I told you half an hour ago, that, okay, there's a question maybe I'd like to take before you want to pose a question. Neelkama? No? All right. Now, remember, I told you half an hour ago that we learned to take a look at a paper from a methodological perspective. And in the meantime, I'll go ahead and I'll share this paper on chat so that you can also open it. All right. So I sent you the slides, but I would strongly encourage you not to quickly scroll and go through it, because there are some things that I want you to think about, some exercises. I don't want you to look at the answers right now. Okay. I mean, you can look at, there's nothing wrong in that, but then you wouldn't be thinking about those things. So I can take a question or two before we go with the second session. Was it an aha moment for you all? Or was it something you kind of knew about, that you can't have mixed method without some kind of mixing going on?
It was very insightful, because I thought multi-method and mixed method were the same.
So mixed method is a subset of multi-method.
Yeah.
The papers that have the title multi-method are not wrong, because mixed method is multi-method, but mixing has to be.
Mixing has to be.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question.
You left us at the climax, actually.
And if someone someone said, I'm yet to get the email. There's no email that went. There's the slides that I sent here on chat. So if someone can share it again, then other people can also get it. Yeah. How about the question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sometimes we were talking about this mixing. So interview, and then we were talking about survey. There was this point in one of the slides.
Yeah.
So what if the categories that I derive from my interview is not a well-established or a measurable construct? So then how do you mix it?
Wow. Okay, so let's go through the second session. Maybe this question will get answered. If not, we'll revisit it. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah.
So you had shown us a slide where it mentions that at what places the mixing can happen. So in that, one of the point was that the mixing can happen at the analysis level. So the PDF, the example that you shared with us, so there also we were actually trying to mix the quant and qual at the analysis level.
Nope. We looked at the same construct from two different methods, but there's no real mixing that happened. I went into one direction, I saw what all I find here. I went into the other direction, I saw what all I find here. But that interaction never happened. So let's look at what interaction, what mixing means. Maybe then things will be clear. How about that?
Yes, fine.
Okay. So let's get started on session 2. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Yep. Some people are in the waiting room if they can be let in. Yeah. So monitor the chat. If people haven't got the papers, then feel free to share it again. I'll make this full screen. Okay. Now, in the first session, we learned about what is multi-method research, what is mixed method research, and what is not mixed method. We also looked at what are the challenges of doing it and what are the advantages of doing it. We also looked at some of the titles of papers. So this is good enough for a 1 hour or 50-minute understanding of mixed method. Now we'll come to the mixing part, the actual where is the mixing happening. What I'll do is I'll give you 3 cases. These are not mixed method research. These are analogies that will help you understand mixed methods better. So I'll read out the 3 situations, okay? And once again, don't scroll through the slides and read what is going on. Now, I want to understand student learning at IIMA. This is where I work, Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. Okay, so I want to understand something about student learning. Now this is, I hope you all agree that this is a broad enough topic to be able to develop a research study on. It's broad enough. Your research purpose or your research aim is more broad. Think of it as a funnel. And as you go narrow, your research questions get more narrow. Now, please mute your mics. In the first case, what do? I want to understand if IIMA students are learning skills that make them employable. Because that's one reason, one big reason is to get employable. So I survey some students to learn about their perceptions about how the courses they take make them employable. Simultaneously, I interview a few companies about what skills do they expect new hires to have. For you, okay? I'm just asking you to understand what I'm saying. One way of doing this to understand student learning is could you please mute your mics, please? Yeah, thank you. Anjali, could you mute your mic? Yeah. All right. So I survey some students to learn about what are their perceptions about the courses they take. And I also talk to some of the companies, some of the employers. That is one way of understanding. The second thing I do is course evaluations, right? Course evaluations, the forms that students fill out after they're done with the course. Course evaluations show contradictory results. 30% evaluated the course, a particular course they took of mine as not at all helpful. And 50% evaluated it to be very helpful. So very contradictory results. 50% said awesome course, 30% said not working. The rest were somewhere in between. So I pick a few students at random from each group, 30% group, 20% group, 50% group, and interview them in detail about why did they find the class helpful or not helpful. Situation 2 is clear to all of you. Maybe a thumbs up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's a fairly simple analogy. In the third case, I interview a few students about what kind of courses they would like to take as a second year elective. I don't know. I'm new. I haven't taught them before. I want to know what would they like to learn. So I interview a few students. Then, based on what people tell me, some students say, oh, we would love a course on mixed method. Some say we would love a course on survey development. So based on what they tell me in the interview, I develop some of the courses and teach them. At the end of the course, I survey students about how effectively they learned about management concepts through those courses. Interview them, develop the course, teach the course, then ask through surveys how effectively their learning happened. I also record their grades in those courses to see if they did well, they did not do well, what was going on. So I hope all of you will agree that in all the three situations, I'm looking at some kind of a student learning experience, but I'm doing it in different methods, right? I hope everyone agrees to that.
Ma'am, I just have two questions in case 2 and case 3. So we are right now, the question is to test their employability. So just getting to know how.
Not the second case or third case.
Yeah, not happening in the second and third case. But in the first one, yes, we are checking the industry part as well in order to see that whether.
So what's the question?
So they just wanted to double check on this element that on case 2, case 3, that's not happening.
No. I'm looking at different aspects of student learning. One is their course interest. What do they want to learn? 2 is what level they can get. So I'm looking at different aspects. Okay. So now I'll introduce 2 new concepts to you. A fixed design and an emergent design. Okay. Think about it. A fixed design is a design. Let me complete it. Okay. A fixed design is a design that was fixed from the very beginning, which means I knew what to do. I did not need any kind of student output or any kind of asking someone. Whereas an emergent design is a more flexible design. I wait to do something, I do it, I see how things are going, and then I do the second step based on what's happening in the first step. Are the 2 concepts clear? Fixed design is where the design is fixed. I exactly know what I'm doing, where I'm going. There's no scope of changing anything. Whereas in an emergent design, I do something, I wait for the results, and based on the results, I change or I do the second part. Now for these 3 cases, what do you think they are? Fixed design, emergent design, both, none? What's happening?
Case 2 is emergent design.
Why would you say that?
Because based on the first part of the results, wherein you got that 30, like very contradictory results, then we decided to interview few students from each of the group. So it emerged from my first part of the survey.
Yeah.
And in case 1, it seems to be fixed design because we are very sure that we are collecting, like we want to take insights from both the survey method and the interview method. We are doing it simultaneously.
So I've already decided what I want to do, and that's why it's a fixed design. What about the third one?
Emergent design.
I think third one is the emergent design. Because what you are doing is you are interviewing a few students, and then you are developing courses to teach them, and then you are seeing whether the concepts that they have learned are effective with them or not. So I think the third one is emergent design.
Absolutely. So case 1 is a fixed design. 2 and 3 are emergent designs, but I see here some of you feel that 2 is fixed. Now, could you explain why you think 2 is fixed? It's not, but why do you think it's fixed?
So in 2, we have already decided that we are going to pick a few students at random. So it's only the
No, we haven't.
We are picking, that is okay. It's not decided. Okay.
No, because I didn't know the results of the survey.
Okay.
Of the course evaluation.
Okay, got it.
Just because when I saw contradictory results, I was very confused that how can half of the class love it and 30% hate it and 20% say I don't know. I didn't know this result before. Once I saw that, I decided to interview a few of them. So it's clear why 2 is an emergent design. It emerged from the data that I collected in the first step.
Yeah, so one related question. So if, suppose if I know that I'm going to do a qual study first and a quant study second, but I'm going to decide the method of the quant study based on the first qual study, how the results are coming up. So can it be also called an emergent design?
Yeah, if one sub-study is based on the findings of the other study, then not just the findings, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
We'll talk about it. A lot of these questions will get clarified. So I hope we are all clear about what are fixed designs and what are emergent designs. It's very simple.
Ma'am, I had a doubt regarding case 2. Why I felt it was fixed was because after the contradictory results, you asked them why was it helpful and why wasn't the course helpful, right?
Yeah.
But not doing anything about, like, there's no step following it.
That was the second step. First step was giving them a survey. Course evaluation was a survey.
Yeah, so evaluation happened.
Yeah.
And then you just figured why was it helpful and not helpful. But if there would have been a step after that, that probably you would have tailored the courses accordingly, or you would have...
Yeah, that can happen. That can be like, that way you can go through infinite number of steps. But for these 2 steps,
Okay, got it.
the survey isn't telling me why was the course good or bad. For that, I have to ask people, so what happened? Why did you like the course? Why didn't you like the course? I can't ask these questions in a survey, right?
Right.
In the survey, I only find out whether they like it or not and to what extent.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
That you can do, of course. So that becomes like an example of a complex application of a core mixed methods design. All that is like complicated.
So basically, in case 2, the grouping of students for the interview process happened post the getting the results. So that's why we have considered it as emergent, right?
Yeah. So if I found everyone loved the course, I wouldn't even do a step 2. Everyone loved it. Awesome.
Okay.
That is why it is an emergent design. Is it clear?
And case 3 is emergent because based on the interviews that you took, then you decided what the elective would be and how would you teach them and stuff, and then you survey.
Yeah, because what's the point of teaching something they don't want? I don't know what students want.
Okay.
That's why I first asked them, what do you want? And based on what I could provide, I offered a course. And then I again caught hold of them and I said, now tell me how was the course? So it was a 3-step process. Okay. So we'll move on a little bit. Don't look at the lower right-hand side signs. Let's forget about it. Let's only look at sequential design and convergent design. Just that. We don't have to look at anything else. Now, sequential design is anything that's happening in a sequence. Convergent design is anything that is happening in parallel. Based on that, case 1 and 2 and 3. Which one is sequential, which one is convergent, or both or not?
Case 1 is convergent. Case 2 is sequential. Case 3 is also sequential.
Okay. Anyone who agrees or rather disagrees, not agrees?
In case 3, we have convergent in the last stage because we record the grades also parallelly.
That's a small step. Yeah. No, but...
But then I develop some of the courses is the catch there, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. Case 1 is convergent. Now, there can be different variations of it. So I would urge you not to focus on that last grade, but to look at the overall design. Case 1 is convergent. Case 2 is sequential, one after the other. And case 3 is also sequential, which means fixed and convergent or parallel design mean the same thing. I'll repeat it. Fixed design, convergent design, parallel design, happening parallelly, right? I'm asking the students, I'm asking the employer, parallel. They are the same thing. Whereas emergent design and sequential design are the same thing. Now let's get a little more into detail. We see two new terms now. Sequential exploratory design, sequential explanatory design. Which one do you think, 2 or 3? Which one is what?
Case 2 is sequential explanatory design, and case 3 is sequential exploratory design.
First is, no ma'am, I think first is sequential exploratory design, second is explanatory design.
You mean 2 and
third
3,
is,
1 and 2?
Yeah.
So 2 is what?
2 is explanatory.
Explanatory.
Yeah, that's what she said.
Yeah. But third is not actually a sequential design. Oh, sorry. Third is, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, correct.
So do all of you agree that 2 is sequential explanatory design and 3 is sequential exploratory design? If you don't agree, then please tell me why. Okay, why do you not agree?
Yeah, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, case 2 is purely exploration. Why? It answers why. But in case 3, it's a explanatory design, because it answers, it explains why what design could lead to the better learning experience.
So could you explain why you think case 2 is exploratory? What am I exploring here?
In case 2, it is a sequential measure from the case 1, because we are exploring, we are trying to answer why they behave.
No, one we are not even talking. 1 is convergent. We are not even thinking of that. But 2, why do you think exploration is going on?
We are trying to explore the unanswered, the hidden reason why they behave so. We are trying to explore that. It's just exploration.
But what am I exploring? That is what I'm asking. What am I exploring?
The why question, why the course is not helpful. What are the regions it can be? It's a different regions we are trying to explore.
So anyone has a counter argument for that?
Yeah, it's basically trying to find the impact of X on Y. Basically, what I think here is the course evaluations is if it's an X variable, right? We are trying to understand the impact of that X variable on the Y variable, and the Y is the dependent variable, which says, I mean, so there is some causation thing happening here, because of which I think it's an explanatory.
No, okay, let me put it in a much simpler way. Let me say the interviews with students are explaining why they rated me low or high on the survey. Why they rated the course, not me. The interviews are explaining the survey findings. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
They are explaining what happened there.
Yes.
Whereas in the third case, I'm exploring what students would like to have. And based on that, I'm offering them what they would like to have.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, is it clear?
Yes.
I'm not using that survey to explain anything.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Now it makes sense. It's intuitive. Once you get it, you get it. You just can't unget it. Once you know, you just know. So there's one easy way. Coming to the point, yes, case 1 was fixed or convergent. Case 2 was emergent or sequential explanatory. And case 3 is emergent or sequential exploratory. There's a easy heuristic to remember this. Okay, you might want to write it down. Because once you know this, you'll never get confused. If quantitative happens first and qualitative happens later, explanatory, focus on the N. Explanatory has N, quantitative has N. Exploratory has L, qualitative has L. None of them have N. This is an easy way to remember. Quantitative happens first, it is explanatory. Qualitative happens first, it is exploratory. Quantitative and qualitative happened at the same time. They are convergent. Write it down, then it will make sense. I'll quickly repeat it. Quantitative first, explanatory, N. Qualitative happens first, exploratory, L. Quant and qual happen together, it's convergent. Make sense?
Absolutely.
Now we'll come to the interesting part, which
Yes,
is
ma'am.
looking at
Very easy,
actual
ma'am.
example. Very, very simple. I'm telling you, once you get it, you will never forget it. But I wanted to put you through all this confusion. See, your first confusion is even, like, is it even mixed? We don't know. Then once it was mixed, I told you, is it convergent? Is it fixed? Is it emergent? I could have just given you the answer. But unless you go through that process of thinking for yourself, you will never remember it. But now you will never forget it. So let's look at a real example. And I've already shared the 3 papers. If you haven't received it, then one of you can maybe share it once more, because people are constantly coming and going. Okay, now, one thing we'll remember, a new term here is one more new term, a POI, or a point of interface. It's very simple. It's actually the point where the mixing is happening. That is called the POI. Clear? It's where the mixing is happening. We'll look at where's the POI. So when I talk of typology based, what I mean is convergent or sequential. That is what it means, typology, type based. Okay, I've already told you about these notations. The other thing I'll add, now you can actually draw a diagram on your own, which is concurrent is QN plus QL. There's this and that. Plus means and. Sequential explanatory is QN leading to QL. No more plus happening here. And sequential exploratory is QL. Sorry, there's a typo, there's a mistake here. It should be QL leading to QN and not QL. The second one should be a QN. Okay. Now our entire thinking process, now no more questions asked about what is this and what is that. I want you to remember, 1 will always be convergent for this workshop. 2 will always be explanatory. And 3 will always be exploratory. Just get it there, and then we'll take a look at each paper one by one. Now look at what happens in this particular design. It's from a paper that you already have, but you don't have to look at the paper right now. That paper you can read later if this is interesting for you. Now let's look at what is happening in study number 1. You see a quant data collection. If I hover my mouse, you can see where the mouse is, right? Maybe a thumbs up on your screen. Yeah, good.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. So you see there's a quant data collection happening how? Selection of 48 participants who self-identify as depressed. They are being surveyed. Survey measures, blah, 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 all this has been done. Then there's a quant data analysis. There's some descriptive statistics, there's some group comparisons. It's happened on the left arm. What did you get out of it? Some numerical item scores based on which you divided the group as less depressed, moderately depressed, and very depressed. On the right side, parallelly at the same time, you did some qualitative data collection. From whom? Not from these people, but from their doctors. What did you do? No, I'm sorry. The survey was through their doctors because they provided the health records. And you interviewed these people. So you select the same 48 participants and you did semi-structured interviews with them, the same people. What you got as a product are transcripts. You analyze the data using a constant comparative thematic analysis, And what you found was 4 major themes. Okay, typology of patient perceptions. Now you took the quant results and you took the qual results and you merged the results. How did the merging happen? It's given in the paper when you read it, which is depending on where each person was. They divided the group into 4 different groups according to how depressed they were. And then within that, they compared what they said in the interviews. So they merged the results and then together they interpreted. What did they find? They did a they cross-tabulated qualitatively derived groups with quantitative variables. They cross-tabulated it. If you know what is cross-tabulation, you kind of fit in a table where someone goes in terms of what they're looking for. They also consider how merged results produced a better understanding. So, just not looking at their health records or just not doing the interviews, but they brought both of them together. And here they created a matrix relating qualitative themes to quantitative variables. So, I mean, I don't remember the study, you can read it, but let's say there were a few variables like depression. So maybe sadness, maybe anxiety, maybe mental health. These are the variables they looked for in the survey. But they got some of the same themes from the interview also. So they again cross-tabulated it and they made it fit. And then they interpreted the result. Okay, so data mixing did not happen at the data collection level because data were collected separately from people and from their health records given by the hospital. So mixing did not happen there. All of you agree, right? Then data analysis, mixing didn't happen because you separately did your quantitative analysis, you separately did your qualitative analysis. It's only when you were interpreting the results that you mixed both the findings and you tried to cross-tabulate and fit them into a nice matrix. So the results, the merging happened in the results section, and based on that, it happened in the discussion section. That is what the first case is, which is a convergent design or a parallel design, where the first time mixing happens is at the data. I mean, once you merge the results, it happens at the interpretation level. It doesn't happen at the data collection level. It doesn't happen at the data analysis level. Now, for the lack of time, I'm just telling you what it is rather than letting you read the paper. When people take the class that I teach, they actually read the paper and they come up with this diagram on their own. But I'm making it a little bit easier and faster, where I'm telling you that the merging happens at the results interpretation. Anytime, again, this is a good way to remember. Anytime you do something independently, it's a square box. It's a rectangular or square box. Anytime the mixing is happening, it's an oval. It's just a notation for us to remember and to quickly see where the mixing is happening. So if you see here, the mixing is happening at the merging of results and the interpretation, which makes it a convergent design. Think about this case. This is not a study. This is not a research study, but I collected data from student surveys. I collected data from companies. And during the interpretation, I merged the two to see what makes students employable. Now, compared to that, what would be the second design? The second design was sequential explanatory. We'll take a look at what that means. And I'll give you the sources of where I found this. I'll tell you everything. I've already shared the slides with you. So convergent design is also called a triangulation design or a parallel design. You obtain different but complementary data on the same topic, preferably on the same participant. Preferably. If we don't get all the participants all the time, there's going to be dropout, but preferably we are looking at the same participants. We look for convergence, we look for divergence, we look for contradictions, we look for relationship between the two databases. So we don't go assuming that the two results are going to be the same. They can be different. And that is why we want a mixed methods approach. If we only had a qualitative approach, we'll find some result. Only quant, some result. But the mixing tells us whether the two results are the same or they are not the same. It's a quicker method of doing it. Why is it quick? Because you can start both at the same time. You're not dependent on one phase to complete to be able to start the next phase. That is why if you have less time and you need to do a mixed method study, this might be a quicker approach. You need quant and qual data for every participant, preferably. And also you need to have skills in both qual and quant, either you or your team. Now, what are the advantages? Many advantages. It's an efficient design. You can quickly do it. You can do it with less money. It makes intuitive sense. Each type of data is collected and analyzed independently. And you can also do a direct comparison of participant perspective, convergent. So you are comparing the two. For those of you who know about institutional review board, where you have to have your study approved from the IRB first, you first have to tell if you don't know what is IRB, just quickly Google it. It's a board that approves of your study looking at whether it's ethical or not. So you get a quicker IRB. Why? Because in IRB, you have to describe what are you doing in the study. Now, in a sequential design, you don't know what your second phase would be. It depends on the findings from the first phase, which is why you have to do 2 IRBs. Whereas here, you can directly tell them what are you going to do in each phase. Makes sense, right? That is why you have a quicker IRB. That's the advantage. Now, the challenges is people drop out of studies all the time. So when you're merging the data, you might find that the sample sizes have changed. Then how do you make sense of it? That becomes a limitation. That's not a no-no. It just becomes a limitation. That's number one. Number two, you need to merge text, qualitative data, with numerical data in a meaningful way, something that makes sense. And that is not always intuitive all the time. It may take a little bit of figuring out. And again, what if there is a divergence when you compare results? Then you say that the results were divergent, but you don't stop there. You might have to do a second study to see why did that divergence happen. You don't get a second chance with the participants to again go and find them. If there's divergence, then you say the results were divergent, but then you need to do a part 2 to find out why it was.
Ma'am, what would be the difference between divergence and contradiction?
It's kind of the same.
Same.
Well, contradiction is directly opposite. Divergence is in 2 different directions. They may not be opposite.
Okay, okay.
So just focus on convergent design. Does it make sense? The basics. When you read the paper, things will become even more clear. Okay. Now I'll move to the second design.
Ma'am, only just one question with respect to biases in this stage. Biases at this stage. So when you are doing things simultaneously, of course, qualitative aspect can influence your quantitative data collection as well. So
no, because you're doing it at the same time, and I mean, you have to be mindful of the biases that you don't end up doing the same thing for that.
Okay.
You have to be mindful of the biases.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. Now look at design number 2. What was design number 2? Sequential explanatory. Natory means what? First is quantitative, then is qualitative. So what happens here in a second study, and I've labeled the study so you know which one is what. They start with a quantitative data collection. They survey 278 people and they get the product as numeric data. If you are serious about mixed methods research, when you read a paper, look at the methodology and start drawing these diagrams yourself, because not all papers will give you a diagram. I've chosen papers that will give you a diagram. The more you draw these out, the more the concepts will be clear in your head. Now they did a quantitative data collection and a quantitative data analysis, and they found something. They did factor analysis, frequency, blah, 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 blah. And then they found some descriptive statistics, missing data, linearity, factor loadings, blah, 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 blah. They found something. Now, based on that, they did a case selection. So see, we have our oval, our circle now, which is now where the mixing is happening, which is they've selected a few cases based on the survey results. They develop an interview protocol. They purposefully select, this is important, they purposefully select one participant from each group. They found 4 groups after analyzing data. So they found 4 different groups based on their quantitative analysis, and from each group, they picked up one student. Remember my 50%, 30%, and 20% people. So they picked one different case, and they developed interview questions and interview protocol. They actually did the interview, in-depth interview, telephone interview with 4 participants out of 278. 4 out of 278. They also did follow-up interviews. Thank you. Some coffee helps. So they did follow-up interviews and all those qualitative things that they wanted to do. They had text data, image data, photographs, documents, blah, blah, blah. Then they did a qualitative data analysis, coding, thematic analysis. What they found was visual model of multiple case analysis, codes and themes. And now they integrated the quantitative and the qualitative results, and they interpreted it. And they wrote about it in their discussion, implication, future research. Started with quant, larger sample size, did some analysis, picked up a few people for qualitative analysis, sample size reduced to 4. And then they further analyzed their qualitative data. And again, the oval, the circle appears in the second time when they are writing about both their results. So mixing happened at 2 places. This is an example of sequential explanatory design. Your quant led to your qual. When you read the paper, it will be clear.
Yeah, ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, while selecting.
Could you be a little loud?
Yeah, while selecting the representative from each group, the paper has taken only four person respondents from each group. Then in that case, how to test the data saturation? For example, to meet whether these 4 people from different each group, they respond, whether I will believe on that response or not.
Right. So I'm a little surprised they chose only 4. I don't know if it's 4 people or 4. Well, I think it's 4. I agree that you will not get data saturation.
Exactly.
Personally, I would do a few more interviews. So this could be a limitation. If you read the paper, I'm sure they talk about it in the limitation section.
Okay. Yeah.
Rahul, you have a question?
Yeah. So I had a question. How do you ensure that 4 or let's say even 40 would achieve qualitative or let's say statistical significance in those interviews that you're conducting? So in terms of quant, I understand there are various tests that you can perform. But in terms of qualitative, 276, maybe 4 may not do the trick, maybe 40 may not do the trick. So is there a best practice that comes along to ensure the significance of it? Yeah, thank you.
Right. So it depends on how much resources you have, resources in terms of human power or money or time. It also depends on what you are finding in the qualitative data. So what I would do is start quickly analyzing the qualitative data to see what kind of themes I'm finding, so that if I see some kind of saturation happening, then I could stop. But that I will not know till I have started the qualitative data. What we read in a paper is something that was already done. Right. But when did they decide to stop? We don't know that. It probably depends on once they started finding saturation. Arushi asks about post-positivist influences. When you look at the quantitative phase, you have a certain worldview, you go with a more post-positivist view. But when you are doing the qualitative phase, then you go at it with a more interpretive view. Can mixed method analysis use secondary data and field study? Absolutely. You can use any kind of data as long as it makes sense. Iteration is allowed, yes. So it depends. And in the third session, I'll actually give you a case. I'll show you a case. And that will probably make it a little more clear. Okay, so this is sequential explanatory design. It's a two-phase quant, qual, very straightforward. Used to explain quant or non-significant results or outliers or surprising or confusing results, like, you know, the course survey, the hypothetical case 2 that I had. How many points of interface? 2. Here, there are 2. One is at the data, the participant selection, and 2 is at the integration level. Generally, it's the same participants that we are interviewing. So this is a suitable method if it's just you doing the study. You may not need a large team. I mean, you can have a large team, but you don't need one. Yeah, it is necessary to find the same people because, or at least people from the same population. Let's say there are 2 sections I taught. And in one section, the survey results told me that most of them love my class. Maybe half of them loved it, half of them hated it. But no one is available for an interview. I taught another section. So maybe I'll try to get my interviews from the other section, which is a similar population. I will not interview someone from IIM Bangalore because they haven't taken my class. Okay. Now, researchers and research questions are more quant oriented. So you're basically trying to explain your quant finding by fitting in a qual, which means it's more of a QN capital, QL small letter study. The researcher knows what are the important variables and instruments. So whatever you find in your quant findings, you design your interview questions based on those variables. You need the ability to return to participants for round 2. That's very important, that they have to explain what they wrote in the survey. It needs time to conduct the 2 phases. This is very important. If you don't have enough time, if you have to finish your PhD on time, you're running short, this may not be a good design because you're waiting for the first phase to start your second phase. And also it needs limited resources. You need, I mean, one person can easily do. If you have a convergent design, then 2 people have to parallelly start the process. Whereas here, only I can do the process. What are the strengths? Quantitative people love it, that you are not only giving quantitative results, but also explaining the results. It's straightforward to write and to do, and it lends itself to emergent approaches. The challenge is it needs more time, like I said, and you can't fully specify the second phase, which means you might have to do a second round of IRB. Also, sometimes it becomes a challenge to understand which quantitative finding should I focus on in the qualitative phase. You may not want to focus on every quantitative finding. So that requires a little bit of expertise and intuition. Okay. Also, whom to sample in phase 2? Like this question, the 4 people who were interviewed, how do I select those 4 people? Is it because they were available? Or is it because, you know, I wanted to interview them? That you have to put a little bit of thought about who are you going to select to interview. Can we finish the third one and then take a break maybe? Since we are in the flow, I don't want to stop it. Okay, so the third one, yeah, like you already know, is the sequential exploratory, which means qualitative, it's a 3-phase design. It's not a 2-phase design anymore. Qualitative, leading to the development of something. Like I developed the course, or you can develop a scale. And the third step is validating the scale or floating the course, doing the course, and then finding what I find. So it's a 3-step process. What happens in the first step? You start with your qual data collection and analysis. It leads to a quant instrument developed. It's tested by the quant data collection and analysis, and finally you interpret it. Let's look at it this way. You want to do a quantitative survey, okay? But you don't know what questions to ask in the survey. I do research on imposter syndrome. I want to do a survey on imposter syndrome, but I don't know what I want to ask in the survey. Should I correlate it with, should I add questions on mental health? Should I ask questions on professional development? I don't know. So what I would do is I would quickly interview 10, 20, 30 people, see what are the different things they are talking about. 20, 30, whatever I can in that time or money I have. And based on that interview, the interviews that I get, I pick up themes that are most prevalent. And now I develop a full-blown survey or a scale, ultimately to look at the generalizability of data. You can't generalize qualitative data. Qualitative data looks at a phenomenon, but you can't generalize it. What this helps me do is to develop a quantitative instrument or a course, an evaluative component that can be generalized to a larger population. So there is 3 steps where the mixing is happening. The first step of mixing is happening when the qual data collection and analysis is leading to some kind of instrument or evaluation technique or scale that I am developing. And the second one happens when I develop and apply something. And the third time it happens when I'm interpreting it. Read the paper, it's very simple. The paper will exactly tell you how it is happening. Now, it's a 3-phase design: qual, quant development, quant implementation. 1 qual and 2 quant phases. Now, what does the sample look like for qual and quant? Can they be the same? No, because you're looking at a much larger sample size for the quantitative part. Maybe I do 20 interviews, and based on that, I survey 2,000 people from the same population, not from a different population. But think of it as a funnel. In the first design, explanatory, surveying more people, coming down to smaller number of interviews. Here it's inverted. You interview few people and you broaden it to more number of people taking the survey. Can we consider literature review for qualitative analysis in scale development? No, I don't think, if I'm understanding it right, then literature review is not qualitative analysis. To develop a scale, you interview a few people about that concept. And from that, you derive the themes. And from the themes, you derive the construct. This is the previous slide. Take a few seconds to read it. Well, I would call it a pilot study, because in a pilot study, it's fairly kind of informal. I don't have things very clearly, but this is more formal. It is serious business. So I won't call it a pilot study. Could you please talk on sample for qual and quant being the same? Well, if qual and quant are the same, then you won't get statistical power. If you are interviewing 10 people and asking for quantitative data from the same 10 people, you can't publish it. You can't get statistical power from there. So it kind of beats the, or maybe you want to explain what you mean.
Ma'am, I have a question. Sometimes in qual, we see that there's a category that is influencing the core variable and also another category which is supposed to be an antecedent. I'm talking about 2 antecedents here. This antecedent. So there's a in quant parlance there's a mediation, but so it cannot. This mediation word cannot be explicitly used in a qual, right? So how do you bridge this particular gap, ma'am?
No, you would call it a mediation, but you call it a generalization, generalizability.
No, not exact. Not I'll repeat the question, ma'am.
Or you give me an example. That is better than repeating the question.
Okay, so if I'm saying that interpersonal influence leads to purchase intention,
okay,
and interpersonal influence also leads to social value, and social value also leads to purchase intention.
So that's a causational quantitative claim.
Yeah. So, but I cannot draw this logic in qual.
No.
I can't, right?
No. So for qual, whatever example you gave me, can you come up with a qualitative question to examine that? You're not looking at relationships in qual. You're looking at the phenomenon.
Yes, ma'am.
Does it make sense?
But at the end, the phenomenon also, yes, at the end, but these two are still antecedents. But when you look at the model, when you try to build the emergent framework, I mean, this framework should be tested in the quant at the end. If I'm doing an exploratory sequential design.
Yeah, you're not just, you're testing it, but you're not testing, like you said, mediation analysis. You're not testing something you found quantitatively. You're not always testing it to begin with. You're developing a certain number of constructs to look at. Like I said, if I have to develop a scale that measures imposter syndrome, then I'm not talking of imposter syndrome in the scale items. I'm using other words. Now, what are the different latent factors that will explain imposter syndrome? I do not know. That is where I interview people, because they tell me what is it, what does it mean to feel like an imposter. Maybe it means a sense of not belonging. Maybe it means feeling like a fraud. So this fraud, sense of not belonging, these are the variables I tease out based on the qualitative analysis now to develop my scale, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
That makes sense?
Actually, my question was like I have you draw an emergent framework after your call, right?
What do you mean an emergent framework?
Like a grounded theory framework, for example.
Not always. If you do a grounded theory, then that is what you would draw.
So I'm taking an example of a grounded theory framework. And from there, if at all, I see a sort of a mediation kind of a relationship in my grounded theory framework.
But can you claim that it is mediation?
Exactly. In qual, that's my question, ma'am. In qual, I cannot claim. Yeah.
You can't.
So then in quant, do I have to do the mediation analysis? That's my question.
If that is what your research question is, if that is what you want to look at.
Yes, but I have not defined it in qual. Is it still okay? Like,
it should be okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It should be okay. I'm sorry. It took me so long to understand your question.
Maybe I was not proper.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think I was overthinking it. So yeah. You can totally do. And just to answer another question here, that qual is 20, quant is 1000, but sample frame is same. Exactly. Your sample frame will be the same. Okay. Bear with me. The last design, exploratory. It's a 3-phase study. It needs the most amount of time. So if you think in terms of time, convergent takes the least amount of time, and exploratory is going to take the most amount of time because there are more phases involved here. Okay. Yeah, all these are fairly explanatory. If you want transferability, generalizability, new emergent research questions. Let's look at the strengths. This is also a straightforward design. One leads to the other. And also, when you use a quantitative phase, it becomes more acceptable in terms of publishing in journals that frown upon only qualitative findings, because sometimes it doesn't, again, give you the entire picture. You need a second stage based on the first stage. And it actually, when you develop new instruments, most of the time, this is what you're using. This is when you develop a new scale. Okay. It needs more time. Again, you can't fully specify the two phases. So double IRB. It could be it has to be two different samples from the same population. So it increases your work, increases the time it takes. You should also determine which qual findings to use. Just like in the previous example, you don't know which quant findings to use. Here you have to make a decision about which qual findings to use. Okay. And here you need so many skills. You need to be skilled in qualitative data analysis, quantitative data analysis, mixed methods data analysis, as well as instrument development. So it's best done in a large team. Okay. So let's again take a 10-minute break, because I think this session was quite heavy in terms of just throwing three different designs on you. Just go through the slides and we'll come back at 7:13-ish. Okay.
Ma'am, just one question. You said that we need to be skillful in qualitative data analysis, quantitative data analysis, and mixed method data analysis. So mixed method data analysis, is it a combination of qual and quant, or it's a new kind of analysis?
You're mixing, you're interpreting, you're mixing all these, sorry, one second. All these ovals that you see.
Yes, ma'am.
All that is mixing going on. You need to know how to do all this. You or your team.
Okay.
You need to know all the ovals and not just the squares and circles.
All right, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll come back at 7:13.
Sorry, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah.
What are the basics of mixing? Maybe during mixing, what exactly am I taking care of so that I can provide the better findings?
Yeah.
I mean,
And
results.
do you have the copy of the slides that we shared?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So we could be mixing methods. We could be mixing methodologies, worldviews. We could be mixing, participants, data at the analysis level, data at the interpretation level. It could be anything.
Okay.
You don't seem happy with this answer.
Yes, madam, because I was trying to figure out, maybe in quantitative, I might be using I might be using different styles of analyzing, but what exactly do I use in mixed methods? Because I happened to read the paper written by Invakova. I saw you also provided to us. I think he was talking of kind of creating some themes.
Yeah, creating some themes based on the interviews. And in the meantime, if someone can please again share all the papers and the slides. If you could look at the slides, wherever there's a circle, an oval happening, that is where the mixing is happening. So what you're saying is probably, I'm taking some of the themes I find in the qualitative findings, and then I'm using that to develop my quantitative arm of the study. So that is where the mixing is happening. I'm taking something from here to develop something different there, if that makes sense.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So 7:13, huh? Any of you are going to do it?
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah, a little loud.
Yeah, ma'am. So the examples you have given is mostly primary data collection. So is there a way to mix secondary data and secondary quantitative data?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Primary or secondary doesn't matter. But yeah, see, the point is, if you are using a sequential design, where the quantitative data you collect will depend on what you find in the qual, then having secondary quant data may not be useful. Because maybe that is not what you're looking for. Right? Huh?
Right, makes sense.
So again, that beats the purpose. Now let's say you're doing a convergent design.
Right.
That is where I think secondary data can be useful. But if you're developing something, then you can't take something that's already there.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Okay, so Anupama writes, I am actually just finalizing my design. This is very helpful and at the right time for me. Awesome. See, on YouTube, my go-to place is YouTube. When I don't understand something, when I need to learn something where I can't take a class, I just go on YouTube. There's so much I've learned just because people put up very useful videos for anything, not just for mixed method. So I would strongly recommend, now that you know the terms, if you want to read up a little more, I'll give you the name of a textbook, but other than that, YouTube videos are very good places to understand. On Twitter, there are many useful resources. I think the University of Michigan, they have a qualitative research team. I have to look it up. I follow them on Twitter. They have some very useful videos. So what I'm saying is the internet out there has way, way more than we can imagine. It's just a matter of finding them. All right. Can qualitative be multiple studies in the first phase? Could you explain that? Like again, if mixing is not happening, then it becomes a multi-method study.
No, ma'am, I'm just saying that when you start a skill development, you go with the qualitative initially. And to develop a theme, you kind of go with multiple qualitative. Like
multiple qualitative studies or multiple participants?
No, multiple participants, yeah. Study will be the same. But you go on checking with focus groups and interviews, and then again one more kind of sample to validate these findings.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you can do that, but it's not multiple studies then, it's multiple people.
Yeah, multiple people. That is possible, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can't remember. I think it's the University of Michigan, now that I'm thinking. Just look it up. It's they are there on Twitter and they are there on Google also. All right. So let's get started with the third session then. Just making sure all the windows are aligned. Yeah. Okay. So in the first session, the big concept we learned is that multi-method is not mixed method. Mixed method is multi-method, but for mixed method, mixing has to happen. In the second session, I think the big concept we learned is we looked at 3 designs. Now these are called the core design. At the unit level, the core design. There can be other designs that are complex applications of these core designs. They are more complicated. We will not be covering this in a very first basic workshop, but there's also something called complex core design. Okay. Now in the third session, we'll do a case study. What is a case study? We'll look at a case where I have implemented a study and we'll try to get some insights from that study. I would think most of you in this crowd are either PhD students or postdocs or faculty. So in some way related to the field of academia, right? Where publishing is a big thing. You need to publish, you need to develop your own research agenda. So I guess we are in a crowd like that. One thing before we move on is I wanted to give you an example of how do you, let's say, you understand the 3 designs, but the concept is not very clear in terms of how you should write it. Don't worry about it. This is the template of a sample paragraph for writing a mixed methods design into a report. This is specifically the explanatory sequential, the second kind of design. We'll read the paragraph. We start with naming the design itself. Okay, a paragraph has different kind of components. In this case, first you name the design, then you discuss the phases, then you discuss the integration, then you discuss the reason for using the design. That is the methodology. Someone was asking me what's the difference between methods and methodology. Methodology is the theory behind why you are using a certain method. And then you cite some methodological references. So remember, in a paper, we do a literature search for the content of the paper. But for the methodology part, you also have to do a lit review for the methodology of the paper. Looking at, maybe you are looking at one particular phenomenon. That has been done quantitatively, that also has been done qualitatively, but has not been done using a mixed methods approach. So then you can cite the qual papers and the quant papers, and that becomes your rationale for doing a mixed method, that by doing just one phase, we only have a one-dimensional view of the research problem. Now we are going to get a 360-degree view of the research problem. It's very simple. Just look at how they have designed. Someone had a question about University of Michigan. Could you please mute your mic? I said that the University of Michigan has a Twitter page. No, that's not what I said. I said that through Twitter, I found that the University of Michigan has a page that only talks of qualitative research. And that is how I found the page. So you might look into University of Michigan qualitative research, something might come up. We'll take a look. If we have time at the end, we'll take a look. All right. So I'm reading out the paragraph now. The mixed method sequential explanatory design consists of two distinct phases: quantitative followed by qualitative. Cite. In this design, a researcher first collects and analyzes the quantitative data. The qualitative data are collected and analyzed second in the sequence and help explain or elaborate on the quantitative results obtained in the first phase. The second qualitative phase builds on the first quantitative phase, and the two phases are connected in the intermediate stage in the study. That intermediate stage is where the mixing is happening. The rationale for this approach is that the quant data and their subsequent analysis provide a general understanding of the research problem.
Chalo.
Please don't scribble anything. David, thank you for posting that link. Yeah, I think that is the one that I was looking for. Please don't scribble on my screen. The qualitative data and their analysis refine and explain those statistical results by exploring participants' view in more depth. So for the design that you're thinking,
Chalo.
It's so much better when you put it on paper. Try writing a paragraph like this. Okay, Abhishek, you are loud and you are scribbling on my screen. That is not acceptable. Thank you. Okay, now we'll talk a little more about mixed methods research. Think of the differences between a mixed method study and a mixed method paper. Have you thought about it till now? What we read are mixed method papers. But there are mixed method studies. A mixed method study is typically much broader in scope and can go on for a long period of time. Okay. Now, but all the papers that come out of a mixed method study need not be mixed methods in nature. So you could be publishing qualitative papers and quantitative papers out of a study that used a mixed methods design plus a mixed methods paper also. Okay. Think of it in terms of multiple publications. When you design a mixed method study, it's more long-term, it's much broader in scope, and you can get multiple papers out of it. Now, in the respective papers, whether you are publishing a qual or a quant paper, you'll see the authors write, this paper is a part of a larger mixed method study that looked at so and so, so and so, so and so. You publish what mixing happened as a separate publication, but if you have more data that can be looked as quantitative and qualitative paper, you can also publish them separately. You only have to acknowledge that this was a part of a larger mixed method study. Now, in 2017, I did a study on the imposter syndrome. It was quite simple in design. I wanted to see why certain people feel like imposters. Which people? People in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, and people in medicine. What kind of people? Students, so PhD students, medical students, also postdocs, faculty, people who work in the industry. Why do they feel like imposters? Now, I did not know what I was going to ask in the interview. My primary intent was to do interviews. But when I did a literature review, what I found is 90% of the research is quantitative. They were done in different countries. I was not so clear about what I could do that is different. So what I did is I first floated a survey. In the survey, and there's a link here. You can go to that link. I'll also show you what that link did. So this was my website from my previous employer. You can see the web page, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is where it had all my information, and then it had a button to the imposter phenomenon study. If people wanted to read a little bit more, they could go below. And now, again, once they've read and made up their mind, they can click on that. When you click on that, it tells you about, first of all, what is the imposter phenomenon? Because you want people to understand what it is even before they are eligible to participate. Then I talked about why is it important, eligibility, time commitment, the usual things that we talk about. Okay. Then came the link to the survey that doesn't work now. But what the survey had was scale items. There are two different scales that look at it. So I had items from two different scales. I had a few demographic questions. And I also had one open-ended survey question. What was that open-ended survey question? Could you describe an instance when you felt like an imposter? So I'll repeat once more. Survey leading to interview. Survey was anonymous. If you wanted to be interviewed after the survey, then you gave me your email ID in the survey as the last question. If you don't give me your email ID, I don't contact you. So some people only did the survey, but everyone who did the interview had to take the survey. And in the survey, I had scale questions, scale items, demographic questions, and one open-ended question that asked some people about, can you describe an experience when you have felt like an imposter? Okay. Now, I did various things to promote my survey. I won't go much into it. I went to conferences. I gave them my visiting card with a link to the survey printed at the back. I was also thinking of long term. So this was not a study for a one publication kind of study. I wanted to develop my research agenda for the next 5 years, at least, by doing this study. Okay, so if you design a mixed method study, I would recommend think long term. Don't think short term, because there are multiple things that you can be getting out of that study. My question to you is based on what I just told you. Forget about what kind of design, sequential, emergent, blah, 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 doesn't matter. My question to you is, where did the mixing happen? You can either say it aloud or you can write it on chat. Where did the mixing happen, based on what I just told you?
Data collection.
How?
Through email IDs,
because
something to do with demographics.
So data collection. So what you mean is
at the time of
data,
yeah. So like you asked you invited people to participate in the survey, and the ones who were interested in giving interview to you probably gave their email IDs, and then you later contacted them.
Yeah. So mixing happened at the participant level. Okay. Anywhere else?
Ma'am, mixing also happened at the time of the data collection, because it may happen that the same person you are interviewing and he is also filling the survey form.
Yeah, but I didn't analyze the survey.
Okay.
So that is participant level mixing. That's not analysis level mixing. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Now, I'll give you one more key information. I think this is important for you to think clearly. You didn't ask me why I asked that open-ended question. I could have asked it, at the interview itself, right? Why did I ask them an open-ended question about why did you feel like it? Rather not why did you feel, but when did you feel like an imposter? Now, what it did is, see, you work with a limited resource of time, money, energy, whatever it is. You can't interview everyone. It could be that people who filled out the survey actually did not feel like imposters. They just didn't know, or they somehow got in the study, or they were bored, or something happened and they filled out the survey. So I don't want to schedule an interview with a person and then start talking to them, put my time and their time, and then realize that they are not eligible for the qualitative part. So beforehand, I asked them, please describe when you felt like an imposter. Many people said, I have never felt like an imposter. I have no idea why did they participate in the study. But that's not the point. They also gave me the email ID. But I never contacted them because they say I have never felt like an imposter. So it's a self-selected group. It's not a prevalence study that how many people in a population feel like an imposter. It's a study about, given that you feel like an imposter, why do you feel like an imposter? So there was no point in contacting people who say I have never felt like an imposter. The second thing is it can be an uncomfortable topic for people. Now, what people said sometime kind of became an ice-breaking question. So I could say something like, so, hey, you told me when you went playing ice hockey and something happened and you fell down and you couldn't compete in the Olympics and you felt like an imposter. So could you tell me a little more about that? So I already knew interviews are awkward because I don't know the person. These were telephone interviews. I could not see the person. How do you start a conversation? So that gave me something to start a conversation. Okay. And very importantly, I didn't know. Remember, I told you I didn't know what to ask in the interview itself. So I quickly analyzed some of the open-ended question. I saw certain themes coming up. So those became my interview questions. Then again, there would be 50 more surveys. I would quickly see what are people talking about. And those would be a part of my interview questionnaire. So I ended up asking a lot of interview questions I had never thought of, just because it's not there in the literature. But because participants quickly told me why did they feel like an imposter in a given situation, I analyzed them thematically, and that became a part of my interview protocol. So in a span of 14 months, this is what my data collection looked like. I ended up collecting close to more than 950 surveys, out of which I interviewed 410 people. It's a huge data set, especially if you look at the qualitative part. Now, can you once again tell me which place did the mixing happen? And the answer is not just one place. It happened at various levels.
At the data interpretation level, ma'am?
Data interpretation, yeah. And?
Data collection, data interpretation, do both the levels?
Yeah, so it was not a simple code design. First of all, was it mixed or multiple or none? It was a mixed because there was certain level of mixing happening. Mixing happened at the participant or sampling level. You have to be a certain kind of person to be interviewed, which is you have to have taken the survey. It happened at the methodological and methods level, which is that open-ended question was a connection, a mixing point between the surveys and the interviews. Okay. And it also happened at the data analysis level for some papers. Let's say I looked at postdocs feeling like imposters. So what I did is I analyzed from the scale items, where do they stand in that scale between 0 to 100? Whether they feel like an imposter, how high is it? I also combined it with the qualitative interviews that I had done. I shared my quantitative findings. I shared my qualitative findings. Quantitative was more to make sure that someone who says that I feel like an imposter don't get a low score. Like they don't score at like 20, which is like low imposter. And so it was a confirmatory result that people who said they feel like imposters actually stood somewhere between high and intense level of feeling like an imposter. So this was more of a confirmatory result. So I can't tell you whether it's a very simple code design where one follows the other, because that mixing was happening at various levels. It's definitely not a convergent design, because I didn't separately collect interviews, separately collect surveys, and then see what is going on. I did some kind of a mixing at the participant level. Does this make sense, what I told you? Okay. Now, remember that I did not alter my interview questions based on whether someone scored highly on a survey or lowly on a survey. Otherwise, it becomes like a correlational study. What is the correlation between feeling like a low imposter versus feeling a certain way in the interview, and also feeling highly like an imposter versus behaving in a certain way? That wasn't the point. That mixing happened when I was writing the papers, but my interview questions were only dependent on the open-ended question, not the scale items. Okay, so based on that, so far, I've been able to publish all these papers where the orange arrows look only at the qualitative findings, including the open-ended survey question finding. The green arrow looks at only the quantitative data, no qualitative data. And the blue ones look at mixed methods data. So the one I told you for postdocs, I compared their survey scores and what they said in the interview. And the last blue arrow is a methodological paper that I'm writing, where I'm going to talk about how open-ended survey questions can aid in rigorous qualitative research design. And there are plenty of other papers only from this data set for the next 3 or 4 years. So the idea I want you to take, the message I want you to take out of this is that if you spend some time designing your mixed method study well, then you can make sure you have enough papers and you can be employed for the next 5-6 years just based on one study where you have been able to effectively collect data. So mixed method study has that kind of potential because you are getting two different kinds of data at the same time.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm also working on a skill development. But my question is, suppose you are going for a mixed method and you have a huge study at the end. So why don't you, means if you have a kind of opportunity to publish in A category or A star versus B, so if you go with the qualitative study and publish it, and in a B category, or you can mix it together and publish in an A or A star. So that which one is better?
See, I personally, I mean, different people will have different answers, but I would personally not see that in terms of see my research and a journal in terms of A or A star or B, because these categories change. I hear a lot of this conversation of A and B and A star in India, but I only go for journals where I know that the right kind of readers are reading my work. Because what is A today can become B or C tomorrow. It's a fluid category, right?
So it is like if you have a mixed method approach, you can publish 2-3 papers out of the entire study.
Yeah, but if you haven't written it well, then it may not go to any place. You still have to do a good job of it, is what I'm saying.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, some of these might be B, I don't know, or A, like, I don't know. But I go for journals where I know that these are the people. The readership is what matters to me and not the category of the journal.
Okay.
Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
Yeah.
If I'm doing an exploratory sequential design, and basically the second phase is basis the first phase. So if I publish the first phase first, I mean the quali as an individual paper, sometimes the quanti doesn't sound so relevant because there are so the factors can be so disparate. I mean, if at all it's a grounded theory framework in the first paper, it'll get accepted because it's only a grounded theory paper. But the quanti which tests the grounded theory framework will have disparate variables. So maybe it doesn't stand ground for a research problem or a research question.
No, I won't say that, because in that second paper, you write about your first paper that this is what you found in the first study. This is a part of a larger mixed method study. And the first study findings said this and this, based on which the second one was designed. That is how I would write it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
So again, Blue Arrows is where I actually published what I was mixing, but I was not mixing all the time. I could just look at independent things going on. And that is how I would encourage you to think about your mixed method study in terms of how many publications you can get, knowing that not all of them will be mixed methods publication. Some will be purely quant, some will be purely qual. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So this work which you've done, so it will you conducted the survey and then followed by the interview. So that's basically the sequential, explanatory, mixed method design.
It's not a straightforward answer. It's sequential, definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
But
so, it's not definitely an explanatory part. Yeah, that is what I was.
No, because I did not use any of the scale, the survey items to develop my interview. I used open-ended items to develop my interview, and not all the time again.
Also, one thing, what I was thinking, that in your study, since you took you conducted a survey in the beginning, but then at that point also, I think not much would have been known about this imposter phenomena to incorporate right kind of questions in your survey.
That's why I did not incorporate questions. I only incorporated scale items.
Okay.
It only had scale items, demographic questions, who are you, and that open-ended. One big open-ended question, tell me some instance when you felt like an imposter. That's why I didn't ask anything else in the survey.
That means not much things were there in that survey. I mean, because you would
I would say not much things were there, because I certainly published out of the survey data itself. They were all scale items. So I use the scale items to see, we did like a factorial analysis to see like the true imposter versus, we did those kind of categorization, but that is a completely quantitative study.
Right. So it is more, because this is more kind of an exploratory kind of a study.
I would say that, yes. Yeah.
Ma'am, can I ask?
Loudly, please.
Yeah, this is a part of my study related to the your social reporting standard.
Okay.
How companies report their CSR activity is a part of the reporting standard. What I did a content analysis of the reporting, report already published reports, and I categorized them and converted it to a scale based on the prioritization using the quartile statistical method. Okay. So the entire coding has been converted to a scale, standard scale. So this part till now, this part has been published. So now what, I have already started, I'm using these scales, and I'm trying to understand how the employee of that company, particular in that particular industry, they perceive about those reporting standard. So here, is it okay that at this point I'm able to mix the point?
Yeah, at this point, you can validate the scale. You can do another round of interviews as a second study to see, you talk of perceived, so perception, to look at perception.
Okay, employees' perception towards the reporting standard, whether there is a coherence or not, what they report and how the employee perceive about the reporting, whether there is a coherence or not.
Yeah, I need to know a little bit more, but based on what you said, I don't see why it's not possible.
So can it be possible, termed as a mixed method, because here the same question scale I'm using to understand the perception?
That I don't know. That I'll have to understand it a little more. Like I can't just quickly tell you based on what you said in like a minute. I'll have to take a look at the design. You draw it and then you will see if there's mixing happening. When you draw it, it's evident. Okay.
Okay. I'll discuss later. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Just a sec. Okay. So these are the further readings, the papers that I shared with you. You'll also have it in the slides. All of them are available on Google Scholar. The activity that I don't know, we have a lot of time to do is I told you to think about one study that you want to do. This is really useful when you do it, which is you describe how this topic could be studied using each of the 3 core designs discussed in the workshop. Like how I gave you a case 1, a case 2, and a case 3. Whatever topic you thought that you would do, try to write a research question using the convergent approach. A second research question, or you don't even have to write a research question. You can describe how will you do it. So I won't be sharing the previous slide because that's unpublished data. I want to publish it in a journal, which is why, this one, do you mean? This one is already there. The only slide that is missing is this one. This is unpublished data. So yeah, I will ask you to write an explanation paragraph looking at how would you design for the same research topic, a convergent design, a sequential explanatory design, and a sequential exploratory design. Try it. It takes some time. It will take about 15-20 minutes, which is why we won't do it now, but it will be very useful for you to get your conceptions clear. The other thing that I wanted to do right now is I want you all to go on Google Scholar or any other website that you use for your own learning and to find out one journal, not one paper, but one journal that publishes mixed methods research, one journal in your field, whatever field you are from, that publishes mixed methods research, one conference in your field, and also one textbook on mixed methods research. Maybe you could take 5 minutes and put it on chat so that everyone can learn about the different journals. The one that I follow is JMMR. I'll write it down. It's Journal of Mixed Methods Research. They only publish mixed method studies.
Ma'am, irrespective of the area.
Yeah, irrespective of the area. So take a look at the journal. And in my field, I'm from the field of education, AERA, the American Educational Research Association. they have a separate strand, a separate wing of mixed methods research, where we only present work on mixed methods. Oh, EPW, interesting. Any others? JMMR, EPW, European Journal of Marketing. Google it. This Michigan, yeah, save that also, the link that David shared. That's an important one. Okay. Now, while you're doing it, I'll quickly tell you how to locate. Now, you already know how to because we've looked at the titles. I look up mostly on Google Scholar. I use the word mixed method. I use the word mixed methods, mixed methodology. Then I also, put them within quotes or put the plus sign, and I do qualitative and quantitative because, like you saw, not all papers use the term mixed methods. Or I do survey and interview. And the last slide I had was that most of what I talked today is from this particular textbook. You can use any textbook that's available out there. Creswell is one of those people who's kind of done a lot of pioneering work, John Creswell, in the field of mixed methods, but there are other people as well. So this is the textbook that I have used. And that is all I have. I would love it if you can continue to talk about some of the journals and some of the conferences where mixed methods is talked about. And also if you could write about who you are and what field you are from, because I never got a chance to know who all of you are, but I would love to know if you write at least your field, what area do you come from? I would love to know that. And of course, if you have any question, like broad question, not a study related question that you're doing, because for that, I'll need to know a little bit more about your study. But if you have any broad question, you're welcome to ask me for the next 10 minutes.
Ma'am, I had a question. So with your survey and your interview design, what I understood it was a continuous survey which was floated and you started interviewing. So when did you decide to stop, and what is that point where you know this is enough?
Good question. So for me, data collection happened for 13 months. I stopped once I got this job at IIMA and I was leaving the United States. That's also when I ran out of money and ran out of time. But I kind of had reached data saturation by then because I did all the interviews. So I knew what people were talking about. And that is how I decided to stop. Basically, I moved countries.
Thank you.
I'm quite interested to know, that how did you thought about the first survey? Because you were trying to work on something which is totally unknown. You knew nothing about it. You knew no questions what to ask in an interview. So, I mean, how did you prepare that survey? I'm quite interested to know that thought process.
So I'll tell you what my thought process was. I first learned about the imposter syndrome when I myself was a PhD student. So this was back in 2011. And I wrote a grant in 2016. That's when I got my first job as faculty. And I started this study in 2017. So between 11 and 16, for 5 years, I thoroughly read the literature. That would be the first step. If you want to do work to further a field where this amount of work has not been done before, you need to spend a lot of time reading and knowing the field. Once I was familiar with all the papers, I figured out a couple of things. Number one, 85 to 90% studies were quantitative. The stories of people were missing. We're talking of a very personal experience, but people were not getting interviewed. That was point one. Point two, a lot of this work was done by psychologists, but that education view, that social scientist lens was not there. So I could already see some of the holes in the wall. You know that literature gap, the holes in the wall? I could already see some of those holes. And my idea was to plug those holes. So I knew that I would be doing a primarily interview study. Now, this is my thought process. I was talking to a lot of people. I would catch random friends and I would bounce my idea and I would say, what do you think? They were not even in my field. And one thing I realized is you need to develop a certain level of trust for people to share personal life experiences. And a survey is a good, quick way of getting some data where the participant also knows that I'm doing some more serious work. And if they are interested, then they can further tell me about their stories. If they don't have the time, it's a one-time deal. You give me some data, quantitative data, and you say goodbye. I don't even know who you are because you're not giving me any kind of email ID. But as you can see that about 50% of the people came back and probably more would have come back. That was possible because I primed them about the topic. And that is how I thought that a survey before an interview could be an interesting way of finding more people to interview. I also created a Twitter page at that time so that I could start sharing some of the work that I already published. So I took some of this preliminary data, I talked about it at conferences, I gave talks, and I started uploading those YouTube videos. So it was a period of time. My one big suggestion to you is if you want to do a long-term study, then spend an adequate amount of time collecting data. Don't keep that window short, like 1 month, 2 months. Don't do that. If you can afford it, do it for a, 1 year, 1.5 years is a large enough window if you can afford it. If you can't, then you can't. Because in that time, you are also doing some preliminary data analysis and you're posting it, you're sharing it, and that kept bringing in more participants. So if you look at this graph, there are certain peaks and then there are certain places when the numbers kind of went down. The numbers also went down because I was traveling, I was busy, I was going to conferences, so I could not interview. But every time I had a basic finding, I presented at a conference and I posted it on Twitter or I went to a conference, gave people my card, a fresh set of people got interested in this work. And then they started taking the survey. So that's my big suggestion, that please keep your window of data collection longish so that more people get a chance to participate. Does that answer your question? It was a long, winded way of answering.
Is it possible to have a glance at the initial survey that you made, maybe through a paper or something, that you published? Or
that survey is not active, but really it took like 6 or 7 minutes. It had some demographic questions. What's your age bracket? What's your gender? Not gender, what's your sex? What's your, not your name, but what's your current position? How many years have you been in that position? Then there were all those scale items. And it ended with one open-ended question. That's all. It was nothing fancy. It was not even like a survey in the sense that they were not survey questions. They were mostly scale items.
So these scale items were of the imposter phenomena. Some
So there were two that I used. I didn't talk about it. There's a CHIPS, CIPS, Clan's imposter phenomenon scale. You can quickly Google. You'll find it. It's a 20-item scale. And then there was a Harvey imposter phenomenon scale, HIPS, HIPS, which is a 14-item scale. Now, you might be wondering why, if I'm collecting data from one scale, CHIPS, why do I need to collect data from the other one, another scale, looking at the same thing? That is because I wanted to see if one is better than the other, if there's any correlation. And that is what the quantitative paper, part of it did. I think it looked at the two scales and how good the two scales were.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah.
Considering that PhD is in generally in India, PhD is a 4-year program and you spend 2 years doing coursework and you start your thesis. So do you suggest mixed method research because you hardly get, you hardly get 2 or 3 months to collect data of one methodology and maybe for another methodology for another month or so.
Right.
So do you think this kind of, a crash course kind of a thing, this quick way of collection of data
would be robust
enough?
Yeah, see, you should do it, number one, if your advisor knows how to do mixed methods research, or someone in your committee knows, because ultimately they are the ones who will be advising you, right? Number two, I see a good convergent design. If you already know the literature, you have to know the literature first. But I won't say a sequential is not possible, but a sequential will take more than 2 years, all combined. So number one, you need the expertise of other people. And number two, you need to choose a design where you'll quickly get results. And also you need to choose a topic that will work. If it's an esoteric topic where you won't find many participants, then you'll be stuck. That is why I never did it as a PhD student. I only used that time to read the literature. But once I was faculty, I could do anything that I wanted, which is when the risks I was taking were kind of lower. Also, I got a grant to do this. I got about $30,000. It's always better to do a study when you have money to do it, because then I could get all my 410 interviews transcribed by an agency. I was just not sitting and transcribing them myself. Or I could go to conferences to talk about my work. This grant took care of all that money. So for all this, you need money, right? Which is why the timing was good for me, because I already had money to do this work.
Ma'am, please excuse my question, but it goes back to the first paper that you discussed, that it was a multi-method study and not a mixed method study, because throughout the paper, they did not mix either the data, like data collection time or method. They were just two separate studies in which
looking at the same thing. Two separate studies looking at the same thing. So think of it like two separate trees.
Okay.
They never merged. Thank you, Dr. Ganesh Kumar. A lot of you writing. Thank you. So, yeah. So it's 8 o'clock. I could stay a little bit longer to take questions, but if not, then thank you so much for being here. I think we had like more than 100 people, which is awesome on a Friday night.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah. And write to me. You have my Twitter. My email ID is very discoverable. It's on my website. So write to me about what did you find useful. Are you planning to do mixed methods research? We can have more conversation outside this workshop. So thank you so much, everyone, for participating.
Thank you so much for helping us.
In that first PDF paper that you showed us, if we want to convert that methods into, if you want to convert that multi-method to mixed method, so they could have actually talked about mixing the results, maybe the answer from the parallel study, that they said that the answers are similar from both these studies or something like that. If they would have done that, so would that have been called as
the problem is the participants, the kind of data was not the same. One kind of data was Facebook pages. The other kind of data were interviews. People give interviews. Facebook pages don't give interviews. So then you can't even, you started it on a multi-method note. You can't mix it. You can't say that Facebook pages say something.
Right. Thank you.
What was one big, for those of you who stayed back, what was one big aha moment for you? One big learning, if you had to consolidate it into one big learning, what was that?
There were many. Number one was the difference between multi and mixed. And then, the difference between method and methodology. Methodology is a theory behind method, which I never thought
Google it. You will find everything on Google. What is the difference? Because a lot of people have asked this question, and my students ask me too. So I tell them the difference, and I ask them to, learn it on Google. Methods and methodology are not the same. See, method is an interview study, but methodology is the rationale behind why I think an interview study is the right way to do this work. That is the methodology.
Yeah. And the last aha moment was that quan and qual is X and N, the easy analogy that you gave us.
Yeah.
Like explanatory, that was like, I'll really remember it for my life now. And
once you know it, you won't forget it. That's the point. That once you remember where the N goes and where the L goes, it's very intuitive. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, ma'am.